So I just finished watching Brian Zane's recent classic pay-per-view review of Uncensored 2000, WCW Uncensored. And he brought up the fact that it was around this time that the disdain for Jeff Jarrett came into being. And look, honestly, I don't blame anybody for not liking a certain wrestler, man or woman, if they're overexposed or put into positions that, quite honestly, fans and even those in the business truly believe they don't deserve to be in. So I can understand the disdain people have for Jeff Jarrett at this time, and even, resenting him even today. But here's the thing, though. I'm not going to sugarcoat or anything, all right? But back then, in the 90s and the 2000s, and even in his run in TNA, I don't know what it was, but I always was drawn to Jeff. I was always drawn to him as a fan. There was just something about him that I guess I'm one of those rare people that found, I guess you could say appealing, about this guy. It's like, to me, it didn't matter what position you put him in, heel, babyface, in between. There was just something about him that you had to respect. And to me, for years, Jeff, basically whatever you gave him, he ran with and tried to make his own. Whether you gave him a country music gimmick during his early days of WWF, whether you tried to make him a no-nonsense, NWA old school traditionalist in that short-lived NWO invasion of WWF, or you tried to make him basically the next Stone Cold with the whole "don't piss me off" gimmick that he had. He always, in my opinion, what won my respect for the guy was he always made it work. He always tried to make it work, no matter what the situation. He always tried to make it work. And, to me, when he got to WCW, for his second run, not his first run, because his first run he tried to basically be the Jeff Jarrett of USWA, CWA, with a mixture of a bit of, the Double J gimmick of WWF, but mostly more just, regular Jeff Jarrett. To me, he did good. He won the U.S. Championship and everything. He was slightly aligned in a part of the Four Horsemen, so they tried, but I just felt like, something was missing. And the moment he went back to WWF and tried to, and he tried to, be an NWA guy, he tried to, he tried to reinvent the whole Double J gimmick, and then finally just, like I said, went with the "don't piss me off" deal. I think the moment he, went the don't piss me off route is when he really, I think, found his stride. He found his stride. And he was able to use that, despite how you might feel about the guy, to carry himself into WCW and be able to work with just about anybody he was put against, I should say. Put in the ring with and put against is what I'm trying to get at. But, he did what he had to do. He did what he had to do, despite how you might feel about him. Now, yes, was him being close friends with Vince Russo at the time, much to his detriment, when it came to overexposure, always being put in the main event scene and stuff like that? Absolutely. Was being friends with Russo and then having Russo tell him, "Hey, go be part of the NWO. That's going to give you a run." Was that part of the detriment? Absolutely. Was Russo during the New Blood era and all that, pushing him to the moon, making him the face, or trying to make him the face of the New Blood and one of the main event faces of WCW, even towards the very end. Was that to his detriment? Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But again, I think Jeff basically worked with what he had. And in a way, I think what was going on here with Jarrett and Russo was Russo always looked at Jarrett as somebody that, had he been given an opportunity in WWF to work with Stone Cold, if Stone Cold would have put all those past grudges aside, that this is a guy that could have been, even if it was for a brief period, could have been WWF champion. I mean, we're not talking, a reign, that goes on for months, like let's say Stone Cold's or The Rock's or Triple H's or whatever, but a guy that could have a run with the championship, at least mostly maybe for a month, at least from one pay-per-view to the next. And then, if he has to drop it, that he has to drop it back to whoever he won it from, like Stone Cold or Rock or whoever, then that's fine. Go ahead and do that. But at least, but at least you would have given him a chance. Like, you would have given him a try to say, yeah, this guy, at least had an opportunity to be champion. And I think that's why Russo, despite how you might feel about that guy, decided to push, Jeff, especially in 2000, to that echelon main event scene of WCW, because he wanted to prove on multiple occasions that he can be champion, he can be main event material. I also think the fact that the reason Vince Russo did that too is you got to remember WCW was a more southern-based operation. And most of the fan base came from the South. And I say that with all due respect, no offense. So by basing it, not basing it, but by, basing the push, I should say, of Jarrett, according to that, was probably reason enough for Russo to say, yeah, I think this crowd will be more accepting of him as champion, heel or face, than maybe the overall WWF crowd, even for a month. And I think and believe, in my honest opinion, that's why Jarrett was given 4 reigns as champion. Because they wanted to prove, Russo wanted to prove not only was the guy main event material, but he could be main event material in the eyes of certain individuals, in a certain audience. When it came, depending on, like who you were trying to appeal to and everything. And to me, that's why Jeff got the multiple opportunities that he got. Now, when he went to TNA, and him being put into the main event scene right off the bat, was that a little bit of an ego trip right there for him? Probably. But you got to remember, his father, who, God rest his soul, just recently passed, Jarrett, was one of the guys behind the scenes of NWA-TNA, or the early days of TNA. And by being, by Jeff, I should say, being his son, he wanted to basically, push his son to the moon. And the only way he knew how to do that was to eventually get the belt around him. And depending on the partners they had behind the scenes, eventually leading to, partnerships with the Carters and Panda Energy, they all agreed, yeah, Jeff needs to be champion. But how do we get to that point? How do we make it happen depending on his role, either as a face or a heel? And they did everything they could. They did everything they could with him as a heel and as a face when it came to the NWA Championship. The other reason I think, Jerry Jarrett and everybody behind the scenes at NWA-TNA, mostly TNA, and the NWA kind of agreed to put the belt on Jeff on multiple occasions is because they knew that despite how you feel about the guy, he was a reliable worker. Like, it didn't matter, where you would have an NWA title match at, he would be there. He would go and defend that title, just like all NWA champions before and after him have done, or had done at that time. You would go to different areas and defend your championship against all the top contenders. And that's what Jeff did. That's what he did. And I think that's why they always put the belt on him, because there were some people they would put the belt on. Yes, they would go and compete, in the various indie promotions, NWA-associated indie promotions, and defend the belt. I should know, one of the people that did that was Raven, and I got to meet Raven because of that. I got to meet him, stand close to the NWA Championship itself. So, I understand it better than anybody. So I think that's why Jeff was always being given multiple opportunities. And as a result, he was always rewarded with being put into certain top-tier storylines in TNA Impact Wrestling, despite the fact that, he had already had his opportunity. His time had passed. I think that was all a result of his, dependency that he always had, that basically he showed, hey, I'm always going to be there if you need me to be there. I'm going to be loyal to you to the end if you're loyal to me. And as a result, I think that's why he got these, like I said, these multiple opportunities in top-tier level stories. Even after his run, after the championship, was pretty much concluded. This is why you always had him in a match in these matches with Kurt Angle. This is why you always had him, in matches with Sting, or you had him in matches with who is it? Who else? AJ Styles. You would have him in these matches. And all that, these top tier storylines, because he was very reliable. He was always very reliable in the past. So they figured, well, if we need somebody, even for a short period, to help help out in this area to kind of boost, the appeal maybe, what better person to rely on than Jeff, because they knew that if once they called upon him, he was going to probably mostly say yes, maybe sometimes no, but mostly yes, because, hey, he loves the business, and, he owes a lot, and Impact owes a lot to him, and he owes a lot to them, so it was kind of like a mutual agreement to give him these opportunities. Even when they did the GWF Impact Invasion storyline, for as short as that was, they didn't have to do that partnership. They didn't have to briefly turn TNA into GWF and TNA Impact into GWF Impact. They didn't have to do that, but they did it out of loyalty to Jeff. Out of loyalty to Jeff, and as a thank you to Jeff for always being there to help out the company when he didn't necessarily have to do so after his initial run as on top as champion and doing all these other things was finished. He didn't have to do that, but yet he still did it as a way of giving back, to that company, for giving not just him, an opportunity, even as the founder, to finally, at least have, a reign that he felt was more appropriate, more accepted because of the audience and everything, but also giving people that could relate to him, the unknowns, an opportunity to show who they were to a worldwide audience. And, so to me, that's why I've always had that bit of respect for Jeff, if you will. That's why I've always, in a way, kind of been a fan of Jarrett's, in a way. Because I look at that, and I have to respect everything that I've just mentioned. I have to respect everything that I've just mentioned. Now, again, I can understand why people feel that he's been overplayed to nauseousness, if you will. He's been overplayed to nauseousness, if you will, when it comes to certain things. Even in the past year, him being, overplayed in WWF. Not WWE, but WWE, his, Hall of Fame induction in the past couple of years, his appearance in the Royal Rumble and stuff, his match on Monday Night Raw about a week later and things like that, or even his inclusion as the special referee at SummerSlam, and then 24 hours later being involved in Ric Flair's last match, to quote on that, to paraphrase, asterisk on that. His involvement in the main event of that. And now you have him in AEW in a stable with, Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh, and them possibly being part of the Ring of Honor, the Ring of Honor promotion that Tony's going to be running on a weekly basis in a couple of weeks. I get, I get that some people feel he's been overexposed too much. But I think Brian Zane said it best. The reason people are more appreciative of him now is, one, you don't see him as much except when he's scheduled to be there. Like, he is going to be there, there's no doubt, but you're not going to see him as much on screen unless, him and Dutt and Lethal and all of them are scheduled to be there. And that's about it. that's about it. So to me, in the end, I have to say this. And again, I know, and look, I know it's going to give me a lot of flack, this audio video podcast. But in the end, everything that I've mentioned is the reason I'm one of those people that respect what Jeff has done. Yes, I will agree. Was he the best was he the best attraction to sell tickets? Would I agree he was the best attraction to sell tickets? No, he wasn't. I do agree with people like the Schleg Daddy, Jeff Siegel, that he hit a lot of people with guitars but never drew a dime. Now, that's exaggeration. He did draw money, there's no doubt, but not at the level that he was being hyped up at. I will agree with that. I will agree that if they didn't hype him up to be at this upper echelon level all the time, and everything, that people wouldn't be looking at him, from those within the business and fans wouldn't be looking at him and saying that. If that wasn't, if that had not been the case, where he was forced down people's throats, for the time being, much to his detriment, and I think he would agree with that people wouldn't be saying these kind of things. They wouldn't be drawing these, comparisons to not drawing money when needed. So to me, I understand how people feel about that. I really do. And I will agree that he wasn't the best attraction when it came to selling tickets. He wasn't. But outside of that, you do have to respect what this man has done. You have to respect that he has done everything in the business he needed to do. And even to his detriment and everything, to where he would get people criticizing him for years up to the day, he did what he had to. He did what was, he worked with what was given to him, and, the rest is history. Now, again, I truly believe Jeff Jarrett would agree that if he wasn't pushed as hard, if Russo wouldn't have pushed him as hard to prove a point to WWF that, hey, this guy, even for a month or two, could have been champion and he could have drawn, or at least he would have gotten people talking. If it wasn't to his detriment, if it wasn't for Russo doing that to Jeff's detriment, again, I don't think people would be too critical about him. That's my honest opinion. But to me, there was always something about him that you have to respect. You have to respect as a human being and as a professional wrestler. There's always that something. And that's why I think I was always drawn to the guy. I don't know what it is. I was always drawn to the guy, as a fan and as a human being. I think there's just something about him that you cannot, be negative about. Because where there is negativity, there is also positivity. And I think that along with any of the negativity people have about Jeff, there's also some positives they have about him as well. And not sarcastically either. But in closing, again, I know I might get some flack for this, but I'm probably one of those rare people that actually respect what Jeff Jarrett has done in this business. And, what he's done in this business, what he's done as a human being. And that's all I can really say. Again, some of the things, are to his detriment, but sometimes it was out of his control, if you will. It's out of his control, because I guarantee he looks back now and thinks, man, I appreciate being, put into the main event scene on multiple occasions, I appreciate becoming world champion on multiple occasions, but, I'm pretty sure Jeff's probably looking back and thinking, man, if they would have just let me have maybe a 3-time reign with the champion, a 2-time reign with the WCW title, maybe even just a 3-time reign with the NWA title, that would have been enough. But Vince Russo being a friend of his at that time and loyal to, I guess, Jerry Jarrett, and Jerry Jarrett, by extension, wanted to prove that Jeff could be a main event world champion. And yes, at first, it was yes, I will admit, it was nice to see him finally get that moment in both companies. But at the end of the day, had they only given him maybe just a few reigns with the championship, like I said, 3 reigns with the WCW title and maybe 2 or 3 reigns with the NWA title, I don't think we'd be, I don't think people would be so negative about him and saying that, saying the things that they did, which thankfully, as Brian Zane has pointed out, has kind of died off. It's kind of died off now. So, we can honestly say, things have, definitely kind of changed more for the better. I mean, there are still some people like Jeff Siegel, the Snake Daddy, that will feel the way they do, and that's fine. But looking back at this, I think if you look more at the positives than the negatives, you'll see that, Jeff Jarrett did a lot for the business. He did a lot as a human being, and you can't say any more any more than that about this guy. So despite how you might still feel about him, you gotta deep down respect what he's done, as a competitor, as a human being. And you have to kind of agree that maybe, it wasn't always his fault when he was put into certain situations that maybe he wasn't meant to be put in at that time. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. You will get an audio podcast version of this at BW Rose's Discussions Podcast at all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also, you will find me at my Teespring store as well, where you can get merchandise there that you can't get anywhere else. Also, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at deviantart.com/BVW1979, at patreon.com/BWRoses, a $1, $3 tier. Also, support me at VENMO at BW Roses, the content you can't get anywhere else, here on YouTube. Also, support me at VENMO at Brian-Roman-2 and Cash App at BW Roses 98. But guys, give me your thoughts overall. How do you feel about what I said? Do you agree? Do you disagree? It's up to you. I'm just giving you my opinion as a wrestling fan overall. But yeah, give me your thoughts. And until next time, I am out.